In western Kentucky, people notice when something's off, especially in small counties where everybody knows everybody and everybody knows everybody's business before breakfast is served. And Ohio County is one of those places. Rumors move faster than police scanners. Back in December of 2016, investigators made a grim discovery near a lake inside the Peabody Wildlife Management Area. The victim was 30-year-old Amanda Riley. What started as a concern over a missing woman quickly turned into a homicide investigation involving cell phone evidence, conflicting stories, allegations of violence, and eventually a life sentence. But even after conviction, the legal fight kept going through appeals and federal court filings. Tonight, we are discussing the murder of Amanda Riley. In Kentucky, some stories never get finished. They linger unanswered, unresolved, and often forgotten. This is Buried in the Bluegrass, a true crime podcast from OleGergMedia. Each episode will dive into cases from across the Commonwealth, focusing on documented facts and those pesky little unanswered questions. Welcome back, and on tonight's, how do you say it? I guess it'd be a disturbing journey across this great state. We're visiting Ohio County. Now, technically, Ohio County was named after the Ohio River because it used to be the northern border of Ohio County before Hancock and Daviess County were created. Now, last week we were in eastern Kentucky, and this week we are in western Kentucky. Rural, country, back roads, farmland, woods, small towns where families have known each other for generations. What does that sound like? Everywhere Kentucky. But I do have to say Ohio County is probably twice the population as last week. We were sitting around 23,000 around 2020 census. So like I said, about twice the size of Martin, which we covered the last episode. Ohio County is home to places such as Hartford, Beaver Dam, and Centertown. I'm pretty sure Beaver Dam was the state's first dispensary that opened. Not that I pay attention to anything like that or anything. But even though it's twice the size as Martin, it's definitely not a Louisville or Lexington. This is the type of place where you know who it is by the sound of their vehicle pulling into your gravel driveway. When something violent happens around there, the entire community feels it. That's one thing people outside rural Kentucky sometimes don't understand. The murder in a small county doesn't just affect the victim's family. It affects churches, schools, workplace, entire friggin' communities. And when rumors start flying, good luck stopping them, especially in a case like this. Now, before Amanda Riley became another true crime headline, she was a real person with friends, family, and people who loved her. And that's what matters, because too many true crime stories just get straight to the violence and just forget there's an actual human being in the middle of it. Amanda was 30 years old, and she had deep ties to the local community. People who knew her described her as caring and loved by family. And after her death, the emotional impact across Ohio County was immediate. Family members were devastated. People wanted answers. And once investigators confirmed her death was a homicide, the shock only got worse. Because now it wasn't just a tragedy. Somebody had done this to her intentionally. And in a small town Kentucky, you know as well as I do, everybody started playing detective. As concern grew over Amanda's whereabouts, investigators started piecing together her final moments. Eventually, the case led authorities to the Peabody Wildlife Management Area. If you've never been around places like that in Kentucky, let me just tell you, that's wildlife at its best. The Peabody WMA covers 40,747 acres across Ohio, Hopkins, and Muhlenberg counties. Now, open land is only 15%. Like literally, it's 67.9% forest, 12% wetland, and 4.5% open water. So we're talking water, woods, and isolation. Areas where somebody can disappear from public view very fast. And sadly, those kind of locations tend to show up over and over again in Kentucky criminal investigations. Then the investigators discovered what they had feared the most. Amanda Riley's body was found near a lake in the wildlife management area. The medical examiner later ruled the death a homicide caused by blunt force trauma. At that point, the case changed completely. Law enforcement wasn't looking for a missing woman anymore. They were hunting for a killer. As investigators worked through the evidence, attention eventually turned towards a Donald Lynch. Now, this is where cases like this can get messy fast, because once names start circulating in small communities, speculation explodes. Eventually, everybody suddenly knows something. Everybody heard something. And social media, you know as well as I do how much social media just makes it tenfold worse. But thankfully, investigators weren't building the case off Facebook gossip. They were building it off evidence. Court records show investigators focused heavily on witness statements, timelines, cell phone evidence, and inconsistencies in accounts surrounding Amanda's disappearance and death. And one thing you will notice reading the appellate opinions in this case, prosecutors leaned heavily on reconstructing movements and behavior patterns. That's common in homicide investigations where there may not be that giant flashing neon sign confession. Instead, investigators build the timeline brick by brick. Who was where, who said what changed, what didn't add up, and eventually prosecutors believed they had enough evidence to move forward. Now, according to the court records, Amanda had to take her daughter to the doctor December 16th, 2016. She'd run some errands, picked up a healthcare debit card from her ex. They'd argued this, that, and the other. She'd returned home. And then Amanda supposedly left that evening, but they didn't see who had picked her up. Amanda's body was found floating in the waters of the Peabody Wildlife Management Area early the next morning by a trapper. Her daughter's insurance card was found in her pocket, and that led them to her ex, who identified the body. Amanda's cell phone and a pack of cigarettes were located on top of a boating ramp near where her body was found. Police obviously started looking into her life, her details. Donald Lynch's name could come up several times throughout the whole investigation. One of Amanda's friends provided the police with Lynch's phone number, and it was in Amanda's phone under a Matt Dodge. So she had him listed under a pseudonym. Now, her cell phone contained messages between the two. She had texted actually the evening of the 16th and asked if he could provide some methamphetamine and offered gas money if he could pick her up. So I'm guessing that's who picked her up. Lynch texted Amanda when he arrived at the house, and then Lynch had deleted the text between him and Amanda and had attempted to delete all other data from his cell phone, including a text message from James Johnson, which said, "Hope you ain't been out at your usual nighttime hangout in the last couple days," quote unquote. Lynch gave a statement to the police that they had met that night, and he had smoked some meth with her and left her in the middle of the road, though he was not certain where. Because, that's what I normally do. Let's go get messed up, and I'll just leave you right here in the middle of the road. Good luck with that. An autopsy was performed, and she had died from blunt force trauma to the head. She had lacerations to her scalp, bruising and contusions on her arms, and broken bones in her right arm and hand. Postmortem testing revealed that Amanda had methamphetamine in her blood. The examiner also performed a rape kit, and obviously Donald Lynch's DNA was present. Subsequent testing performed on Lynch's clothes showed that Amanda's blood was present on Lynch's right shoe. Cell phone location data analysis was completed on Lynch and Amanda's cell phones. They were together all night, 7:30 to 9. And then all of a sudden, Lynch's phone left the wildlife management, and Amanda's did not leave it and did not move for the remainder of the night. In January of 2017, a guy named Joseph Cox was walking along the road, which runs right beside the Peabody Wildlife Management Area, when he found a purse under a bridge. He laid it out, let it dry out, and apparently the next day he went through it and found Amanda's identification. and recognized the name from the news and notified the police. This is where it's the wild part. He didn't call the police, but instead he was riding around in search of a patrol car. Okay. He stopped for food and saw a Kentucky State Trooper nearby and gave the purse to the police. Okay. I'm not sure about that one. Now, for the sake of keeping it on the cleaner side, the Commonwealth theorized that she got out of his truck that night and he had his way, and in the course of that, she was murdered. There was an abundance of DNA evidence, which all pointed to the one person. But when it came time for trial, prosecutors laid out their theory of what happened, and like many of these modern cases, technology became a major part of this story. Cell phone evidence, movements, timelines, witness testimony. I mean, prosecutors worked to convince jurors that evidence painted a clear picture of guilt. Meanwhile, obviously, the defense attacked the prosecution's version of events, questioning interpretation of evidence, questioning credibility, questioning whether the state had truly proven the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's important because suspicion alone doesn't convict somebody. The burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, not probable, not maybe, beyond a reasonable doubt. But as you and I both can imagine, after hearing the evidence, the jury sided with the prosecution. Donald Lynch was convicted and eventually sentenced to life in prison. He was convicted of murder, rape, and abuse of a corpse. Obviously, by the time the sentence arrived, years of grief, anger, investigation, and courtroom proceedings had already torn through the community. For Amanda Riley's family, no sentence never is going to bring her back. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. The court outcomes, the end legal proceedings, they don't end the grief. They don't restore the victim's family. It doesn't erase the trauma. But legally, the case appeared resolved, at least for the moment, because the legal system can always surprise you, can it? In October of 2024, an appeal was filed for Donald Lynch. And he said the reason that he did not testify was his fear of retaliation due to certain affiliations of witnesses and relations to motorcycle clubs. Physical health reasons that might arise later if I do. The court says, I don't quite follow the logic of that. So you're being tried for murder here, and you're saying that for fear of retaliation, you won't want to testify in your defense? Lynch, fear and retaliation by certain people who have been called to the stand, their affiliation with certain clubs and relations to a lot of other people around based on knowledge I have of that person and the club he's affiliated with. I choose not to testify. It puts my life and the family of mine that is still alive in danger because he has been to a state where my family is living. The surviving members of my family, and based on the facts and evidence I know of his affiliation, it is detrimental to me and my family if I do get up there and disclose certain stuff. And also that I can't even read. And also that I don't feel that at this time that I'm going to really change anything that's being presented. All righty, okay. All right, thank you very much. Now, Lynch raised 3 claims in his direct appeal. The trial court erred by failing to inquire about Lynch's waiver of his constitutional right to testify. The trial court erred by failing to direct a verdict of acquittal on rape in the first degree, and the trial court erred by failing to direct a verdict of acquittal on tampering with physical evidence. And the Kentucky Supreme Court found none of Lynch's challenges meritorious and affirmed the Ohio Circuit Court's judgment. The Kentucky Supreme Court issued its opinion on March 24th, 2022. Now, side note, this says it was decided in March, and this paperwork was filed in October, like I said, in the first of it. So I don't know if it took 7 months to file it or what the discrepancy is there. But obviously, appeals are very common in major felony cases, especially homicide cases with life sentences. The appellate filings contain arguments by attorneys. They're not automatically proven facts. I mean, they're going to grasp onto anything they can grasp onto. And obviously that distinction matters because people online love just grasping onto anything and turning it into certainty. Now, the appellate courts ultimately reviewed all the claims and upheld the conviction. I mean, the guilty verdict and the sentence remained intact. But, I mean, for the victim's family, the very appeal likely opened every bit of those wounds 100% emotionally, physically. I'm sure they were completely exhausted all over again, reliving the nightmare that was the original and initial trial. Cases like Amanda's are reminders that violence doesn't just happen in the massive cities, or it doesn't have to be a nationally famous case. Sometimes it happens in the quiet counties. Sometimes it happens on the dark back roads in the communities where everybody thinks they know each other. That's when the people closest to the case and surrounding the entire case begin to question, how the hell did something like this happen so brutal? Just happened in some place that felt so safe. But violence gives 0 F's about any county lines, population numbers. It don't care if the town looks peaceful from the outside, because underneath small town life, people still carry secrets. They still carry anger. They still carry darkness, and sometimes that darkness turns deadly. And those are the stories that don't stay buried in the bluegrass. This podcast is a proud member of the OGM Podcast Network. You can follow me on Facebook at OleGergMedia, TikTok at OleGergMedia, same at YouTube, and we also have OleGergMedia.com. So go give us a follow, a like, rate us on your favorite podcast catcher. Hook us up, man. But as always, thank you for listening to OGM Podcast Network.